Hello and welcome. I am Chris Allen, Executive Director of the Kenosha County Historical Society. I will be interviewing individuals for Kenosha Voices, an oral history project of the Kenosha History Center in conjunction with Kenosha Community Media. We hope you enjoy these interviews. So I'm here with Don Fox today, a longtime employee of the Leblanc Corporation, and eventually the plant manager. Welcome, Don. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Don, are you originally from Kenosha?
Yes, I was born and raised here. Lived on the west side, the old west side, on 24th Avenue in 5417. I still remember the address and the phone number, 9635. But I grew up there, and we lived there till I was going into 9th grade. We bought a house on the south side on 30th Avenue, and we moved there. So I attended Lincoln Junior High School there. I went through St. Thomas Aquinas School through 6th grade. Then 7th and 8th I went to McKinley. And in the 9th grade I went to Lincoln. Then I was at the old Bradford School for high school. Graduated from there.
In those early years in Kenosha, do you have any memories of the neighborhood? Places that you'd go and shop or?
Oh yeah, I remember Saturday nights. We didn't have a lot, but we'd be sitting on the front porch with the neighbors, and my dad would give me some money, and I had to walk over to Mac's Canteen and get him a beef sandwich, and us kids got a nut bar. Okay. And that was a big treat for us. You know, in Columbus Park, we used to go to the ball games in the summer, and we had a little popcorn wagon that was on 22nd Avenue. Mrs. Cavelli ran it, and we used to get a bag of popcorn for a nickel. And I said, Ma, give me a nickel for popcorn. You had some popcorn yesterday. Well, I want some more today. So she'd give me a nickel. And a lot of times I'd go visit my grandma. They both lived right down the street on 55th, across the street from each other. And that's my mother and dad, that's how they met. And never to fail, when I went and see Nana, she always had a bottle of pop. She'd tell us to go down on the stairway, go get to the Pope bus, she used to tell her. She didn't talk a lot of English. And before you left, she always give you a dime. You know, oh, that was a big treat for us. And we had a lot of fun in the neighborhood. There was, when we were young, we used to, in the summer, we used to play baseball every day at Columbus Park. And get up in the morning, get all ready, and tell them, we got a big game, we got to go to Columbus Park. So we'd go over there and we'd spend the day up till noon and go home and have lunch, and probably go back in the afternoon. But we had a lot of good times. We didn't have a lot, but we made our own fun.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any jobs growing up?
Yeah, I worked as a paper boy for Kenosha News. I had a route on 8th Avenue. I started out, the route had about 65 customers. And over a year's time, I built it up to 110. And Mr. Schulte wanted me to cut it in half again. And I told him, no way, man. I said, I busted my buns to get them customers. I said, you're not going to take them away from me and give them to somebody else. So we haggled back and forth, and finally he agreed. He and my father went to grade school together at St. George. So we kind of knew him. Then I had a job next to Columbus Park. There's a used car lot there now. It was a Zesto frozen custard. And I would work there during the summer, 50 cents an hour, and all the ice cream I could eat. It was a nice job. And then I worked at, my uncle had a fruit stand in Zion. And I used to go with my aunt down there and help her out down there a couple of 3 days a week. And I got rich there. I made 75 cents an hour. So then from there, I went to Tenuda's Delicatessen. And I worked part-time there during the winter and summer. And also during the summer, I worked for my uncle at Escavelli and Son Wholesale Fruit and Vegetables, driving truck, delivering. So I would work there during the day, and I'd go by Tenuda's at night and work. So today, these kids, they don't want to work that much, but I had enough money saved up. Well, after I graduated high school, I was a member of the reserves, Army Reserve, and I had to go on 6 months active duty. So I went there. When I left, I had a '53 Rambler, and I came home. I had enough money in the bank to buy a brand new Chevy, '58 Chevy, and I felt proud of myself. I just, I was 19-year-old kid, didn't do too bad,
What year did you graduate high school?
1957. We're going to have our 60th reunion this year.
All right. And you mentioned you went into the service for a little while. You came back to Kenosha after that. What did you do at that point?
I worked the A&P on 8th Avenue. And I worked there for, I want to say maybe 2 years. Then I had a chance to get an apprenticeship for tool and die making in Racine. So I left the A&P and went up there, and it turned out to be a fluke. The guy was, he'd hire you for a couple of weeks and get what he could out of you, and then adios, So I came back, and I was unemployed for 2 weeks. And my mother had my future in-laws over for dinner one night, and we had dinner, and then at that time I didn't have nothing to do, so I was finishing my dad's attic, putting a room up there. So I had it pretty much done. So I took my future father-in-law, wanted to see what I did, so we went up there and looked around. He says, you looking for a job? I said, yeah, I need a job. And you come and see me tomorrow. He says, I might have a job for you. So that's how I really got started at Leblanc. I went in the next day and got interviewed and gave me a tour. And I got hired for maintenance department. And that's where I started.
What was it like when you first started at Leblanc in the maintenance department? What was a typical day like?
Well, first thing in the morning, we had to go and one of us would go through the factory and make sure all the light bulbs were working, because it was very impertinent that we had good lighting for the kind of work we did. And another one of us would go and check out all the furnace, make sure that was working properly and stuff like that, just general maintenance stuff. And then we did a lot of remodeling and building, putting up walls, taking down walls, put down flooring, put up ceilings, just about anything that.
And what year would that have been done when you first got hired there?
I started there in '62. Yeah.
What was the building like at that time?
The building was, we had the original building, and one addition was put on, which included an office in the front and a little section on the side of the building. Then when I started there, they were just anticipating putting another building up. There was a cement block building to the north of the building. It was a leatherette company, and we had bought that. So they tore that down, and they put an expansion up there, a metal building, part metal and part concrete poured. And then we added on to the back of the building a couple of years later. And we added a big addition on there 2 years before I left there. So it'd be 1990, 2001, 2001, somewhere in there.
Yeah. So the company grew during that time with the
we
company.
ran out of space. Plus we had bought a building on Sheridan Road that was Moriarty's. We bought that for expansion, and we put a brass manufacturing in over there.
Now, going back to when you first started as in the maintenance department, how many other people worked in the department with you, and who did you report to?
I believe there was like 6 or 7 of us, and we had a supervisor, Ed Waworka. He was also our part-time purchasing agent, and he would distribute the jobs in the morning, tell us what we had to do. And if stuff came up during the day, we had a paging system. They would page us, and we'd go see what it was and take care of it.
What did you do after maintenance? How did your job progress?
For the maintenance department, I went into shipping and receiving. I was in that for about 20 years. And when I started there, we had the shipping and receiving department was about the size of this room. And we had 2 overhead doors there. You loaded everything off the ground into the trucks. And at that time, we were packing instruments 24 in a box. And them babies were heavy. It was ridiculous. So after a while, I convinced them to go down to 12 packs. So I mean, this way here, we sent 2 boxes instead of 1, but it was a lot easier for handling for us and for the dealer too. And we expanded that when the new building went up on 30th, and we put in the stock room, parts stock, and we had an accessory department which consisted of all the mouthpieces and different things used for the instruments. And
at this time, what instruments was Leblanc making?
At that time, we were making almost a complete family of clarinets. We made the B flat, the alto, the bass. Then we start making a E flat, which is a little baby. And later on, Mr. Hampel designed and built contra alto and contra bass clarinets, which were, we were the only one in the industry with a plastic version of that. The wood ones were, you're talking $10,000, $12,000 at that time. And we made these, we sold them for, I think it was around $7,000 maybe. It was quite a bit of difference. And it had the same qualities. In fact, when the first one was built, Mr. Pascucci went to France, and we had to carton up one of them to take with him. He bought a seat on the plane for it, and he took it over there for Mr. Leblanc to check it out and make sure it was right. So he got the blessing there, and so that brought it back and gave us the go-ahead to start building them. and the same thing with the bass or the alto. And then we started making saxophones, alto and tenor, in our plant. And flutes, we came in with flutes eventually.
Can you walk us through basically from when you receive the material to when it goes back out the door? What does that process look like?
Well, we have received the materials, come in, shipping area, they go into the stock, the flat metal stock area, and the press room is right next to it. They come, the materials, most of them come in the 12 by 8 foot sheets, about 1,500 pounds in a box. And it's all mostly nickel silver, leaded nickel silver, and we do some brass. And they range in thickness from 0.96 to I think it was 115 thickness. So as they needed them, they would bring them into the press room and cut the sheets down to sizes that they could work with. And they would press out the parts. And those parts would go into the stock area. And we also got the bodies, which were molded plastic, or were made by Dickton and Mosh up in Neshota, Wisconsin. And those would go into our stock area. We tried to keep everything in the stock room, and then it was a central area for everybody. And then it would go into the different departments. They would draw, the key machining department would draw the parts that the press room had made, and they would cut them to length, proper length, and put the profile on top, and do all the drilling of the holes and whatever notches that had to be made. And they would go back into the stock area. Then the key machining area, or I should say the key assembly, would draw the parts, and they would go to the brazing bench, which was part of their department. It was manned by women, and they silver soldered everything. And we used a mixture of oxygen and natural gas. And from there, they would go into the pickling room to get cleaned. And after they were cleaned, they would come out back into the area, and they would start, well, no, I'm sorry, they had to go into the buffing room to buff them and get the luster up, because we didn't use any lacquer on the finished key. The finished keys were strictly nickel silver, and from there they would go into the stock room again, and as the assembly room needed them for the different models, we had several different models that we made in the B-flat clarinet. They would draw what they needed for the day, and we had a little a cart with these shelves on the padded boxes, and we put sets of 100 keys on each one, so that when they went to the line, they had enough keys for usually 100 keys. They usually made 100 a day, sometimes 110, and they would draw more. Then from there, they would go to the testing room, or after assembly, they would go to, assemblers had a belt in between them. They sat side by side. We had, I think it was 10 benches, 5 on each side. And they would do the horn and put it down on the belt, and it would go up to the next girl, and she'd take it off, and she would do her operation, and so on right down the line. And it was, one side was for uppers, one was for lowers. So when it got done, it got to back of the line there was a lady supervisor there. We had an air test machine that she would put the instrument together and put it on this air test machine and check and see if there was any leaks. If it passed, then she would put them on a rack of 10 and they would go into the testing room where we had 2 professional musicians blowing horns all day. They had a regular routine. They had to play a certain scale. If it passed there, then it would go into our cleaning department. If it didn't pass, they would go back to the girls and have them readjust them. So when left, they were perfect. So then they would go into the cleaning department where they would clean the instrument because during the assembly process, they used to use a little oil for the hinge tubes and screws so that for lubricant. So you get a little bit on the body, so they would have to wipe them off and clean the corks and everything. And they would put them in wedge the keys down for shipments so that the pads would retain their setting because they do have an impression in them. Then they would put them in plastic bags and put them in a case with accessories. We had several different cases that we used. And also we would store some on the racks of 480. We had the instruments would be on there side by side, uppers and lowers. And then we would do that so that when we got special orders, we could just take the horns off the rack and do it up like the customer wanted it. So it saved a lot of work. Otherwise, you would have had to break open the box and take it all apart again, and a lot of monkey business. So it turned out to be a good deal. We wound up, one time we had, I think, 8 different racks with horns.
Where did you get these materials from? Were they sourced locally? Did you have other sources for the metal that you got, and obviously the horns or the clarinets? Did those come from here? Did they come from elsewhere?
The materials, we got some of the material, the brass, flat brass stock. A lot of it came from American Brass. And the nickel silver we got from 2 different sources in New Jersey. And all the little posts were made, I think now. Those were made in, not Switzerland. The screws were made in Switzerland. No, the screws were made in I'm getting mixed up now. The screws came from a vendor in Illinois. He was a Swedish man, and he had a bunch of screw machines, and he made them all. And he was a great guy to work with. I would give him a blanket order, and he would make the parts, and I'd give him delivery dates. So he would deliver them in person. And if I ran short, I could usually call him, and he'd have a little backup pile on his shelf. He would get me out of a jam. And
did any of the instruments come over from France at all? There was obviously a connection with the company to France.
Yes, France. We had. We would get finished instruments from them. Some parts, not too many. Eventually, we first got the parts from them, but as we grew and made our fixtures and machining, we were self-independent as far as all the key parts. So we would just get finished instruments from them.
Was there any special process that the company workers would have to do here in Kenosha with those instruments coming over from France?
Yes, those instruments were they came in wrapped up and we would unwrap them and put them in little tote boxes, and we would put them into what we call our heat cabinet, which was a metal cabinet, and we had light bulbs in there. And we would put the horns in there and turn on the light bulbs. The cabinet was all insulated. And we would put the horns in there for a couple of days, because coming from France to here, they would pick up moisture, and they would change size. So we would have to take the moisture out of them, and they would shrink a little bit. So then after that, they had taken the keys off of them too before they put them in the cabinet. So then when they came out of the cabinet, we put them on a line, and they would have to refit the keys, because they were not much, but a couple thousands, 3,000s, but makes a big difference. So they just take a little bit off and reassemble them, and they would go through the same process, through the testing room and everything, just like our one.
Now, you mentioned the relationship with American Brass here in Kenosha. In a previous conversation we had, you mentioned that Leblanc had purchased items from Frost Company as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, it's kind of a funny story, but when Bob Hampel was building a contra alto and the contrabass, he had problems with finding the right neck at first, which is the curvature part, because the instrument is so long, you have to have a neck that's longer and can bring it down so you're at mouthpiece level while you're sitting. So he finally made contact with Frost Company, and we purchased sink traps from them. And they were two of them. They had a bend on each end, so we used to cut them. We used to get one for the contralto and one for the contrabass out of it. So it was quite a real nice relationship.
And who were the customers for Leblanc? Who did you sell these instruments to?
We sold directly to dealers, authorized dealers, and they're all over the country. We had, how many salesmen? I think we had about 11 guys on the road selling. They would make their rounds. And once in a while, we would take orders over the phone if somebody needed it, the dealer.
And so you're working in shipping and receiving, you mentioned, for about 20 years or so. Was that always in Kenosha? Did you always work for the company here in Kenosha, or were there other locations that you would work at?
Well, we had Frank Holton Company out in Elkhorn. They made the brass instruments, trumpet, trombone, the bass trombone, tubas, sousaphones. So they would make their instruments, and at that time they would ship from there. But then when we put the new building up, or when we moved to Moriarty, we combined them all. We had a truck that went back and forth. We had a guy that worked out there, tool and die maker. He would drive a van. We'd load it up at night for stuff that they needed, and they'd load it up and send them finished goods and stuff back that we needed. And also they bought the Martin Band Company out of Elkhart, and they moved them into the Moriarty building. And they would make their instruments, the student instruments, brass, and I'd package them up, and then we were right next door. We had a door in between. We'd just shuffle them into the main warehouse. That way, when we got an order, we could ship LeBlanc, Martin, Holton, everything out of one deal. So these guys got a better deal on freight and stuff, So it worked out pretty good.
Yep. Now, again, in previous conversations, you mentioned about the plant itself and the interior of the plant, what that was like. You also mentioned there was something unique about the property and what was on the property. Can you go into some detail about that?
Yeah. Our plant was very clean. The floors were either tiled or carpeted. We had air conditioning, and the walls were kept up painted. And Mr. Pascucci was very, very eminent on cleanliness. I remember one time I was down on the far end of the building by the tool and die shop, and we had a little ramp there. There was 2 different levels because it was an older building and we had to join them together. So he was down there and come here, I want to talk to you. So I spy. I could see it in his eyes, you know. I said, yeah, what's the problem? Come here now, stand here and look straight ahead. What do you see? I said, well, I see a turning lathe. And what do you see underneath it? I see turnings. When did you last use that machine? I said, I don't know, last week, I think. Well, why the hell are the turnings still there? Have them clean them up. We don't need this stuff on the floor. So, okay. But that's the kind of guy he was. He was very meticulous with the plant. Then we also had a garden area. It was part of the old city lumber property. And it went from the back of our building up to the railroad right away. And we had a garden and an orchard and a rose garden. We had, I think, about 300 fruit trees. And at one time we had 500 rose bushes back there. We had a greenhouse. We had 4 people that worked back there. One was a certified horticulturist, and she used to grow a lot of the stuff during the winter in the greenhouse for use in the coming up. And we had a garden. It was huge, and a lot of times she would pick the stuff and bring it in the shop, and put it on a table, and people on the way out could grab what they wanted and take it home. I remember one year we had a bumper crop of apples, and we had to put 2x4s, prop the branches up because they were so heavy. And the boss says, geez, he says, what are we going to do with all these apples? I said, I don't know. I said, we sure can't eat them all. So he said, you know what? He said, what do you think about sending them to our dealers? I said, yeah, it sounds like a good idea, but how are we going to do that? Well, maybe we'll shut down for a day and we'll pack these apples up. We'll have the crew pick them all and bring them in, and we'll pack them up and we'll ship them to our dealers. So that's what happened. We got different sized boxes, a little bigger box for the better dealers and so on. But that was quite a feat. I remember that well.
As you kept progressing in the company and eventually you ended up as, I believe, plant manager, is that
Yes.
correct? What was your relationship like with your supervisors and with Mr. Pascucci?
Well, when I first took over, I answered to, oh God, who did I answer to first? Well, anyway, as time went on, we hired a guy that was with American Motors. He came from Ford to American Motors, and his wife was good friends with Leon, and she talked Leon into giving him a job because he wanted to get on American Motors. So he came over as a manufacturing manager. He was over all 3 plants. And he was a strange person as far as trying to get things done. He had ways that he thought would work in our place that he did in the auto industry, but it was a little bit heavy for us, you know. We were a small company, and I used to hook horns with him. And one day he called me into his office and he started chewing me out for something, and I said, "Look, I've seen guys like you come and go. I said, I'm still here. I said, must be a reason. I think I know what I'm doing. I'll cooperate with you as much as I can, but I just can't buy some of your ideas." And the boss kept asking me every once in a while, "How are you getting along with him?" I said, "Not well." He said, "Well, what's the problem?" And we'd sit down and talk. And that happened 3 or 4 times. And finally, one day he came out into my office, sat down. He said, "Well," he says, I freed you up." I said, "Why?" He said, "I got rid of Ted." "You did?" "Yeah." I shook his hand. I said, "Thank you. That's a great gift." So then my supervisor at that time then was the vice president of finance in the office, and he was over all 3 of us, 3 plants, and we all got along good. And he overseen us, but he didn't, stick his nose in where it didn't belong. And he was a great guy to work for. And we would, between the plants, different parts that we made for each other, and that we had a good relationship with each other. We could call each other and say, "Hey, I'm in trouble. Can you help me with this or that?" And it always worked out. Well, then Leon hired another guy. He worked at the American Brass. His father-in-law was a big shot up in New Jersey, wherever the headquarters is. And he talked to Leon about giving him a job. And he hired him. And we come to find out that he was a crane operator at American Brass. And I mean, he was completely foreign to our industry. And this guy did not get along with it at all. I mean, from day one. And again, the boss talked to me after a while. And I told him, what I thought. He said, "Okay." He said, "I'll see what I can do." Well, he didn't want to fire him right away because Leon hired him, and he didn't want to, because he was trying to nurture Leon into the business, and he didn't want to step on his toes. So he was the kind of guy that 90% of his day was on a laptop computer. And he would try to tell me how to order my stuff. And he didn't understand that our some of the lead times on what we needed was a year, you know. You had to place your order a year ahead of time. And he thought I could get enough for just in time, you know. Don't work in our industry. And if you did work, and the guy had to send you parts a little at a time, you know how much you would pay for them because of the extra convenience. So anyway, that went on, and time came when Vito passed away. And I was in my office talking with somebody, and I had the door closed, and I could see him outside. He was pacing back and forth like a cat. And I knew something was up. So my phone rang, and it was my shipping manager. And he said, well, saying goodbye to you. I said, why? He says, I just got let go. Oh, really? I said, yeah. I said, oh, that's nice. I said, guess who's going to be next? I said, I can see it outside. Well, wish you luck. So the person that was there got up and left, and he come in with the sales manager, and he come in, sat down. Says, we're going to have to let you go. I said, oh, really? I said, what reason? He says, well, we got a replacement for you. I said, well, yeah. Who's the replacement? Well, the replacement happened to be the son of a guy that was one of these, I don't know what you call him, a consular or something. And he had brought the kid in with him a few times. And all the kid did was, he was another guy that liked to play on the computer and chew gum. So I said, oh, what experience does he have? Oh, he runs his own company. I said, yeah, it's a company of one, him. Oh, you know that? I said, yeah, I know that. He said, well, we'd like to offer you another job. I said, really? He said, we'd like to have you go back and be shipping and receiving manager again. I said, do I look like I'm crazy? I said, you know, I did that for over 20 years. I said, and I've been out of it for 15. I said, I ain't no young kid anymore. I says, you think I'm going to go out there and break my back again? I said, no way. I said, I've been here for 42 years. I said, I deserve a little more consideration than that. Well, you think it over. He says, we'll give you a severance package if you want to retire. It's okay. So we talked a little bit more, and I told him, I said, you know what? I made up my mind. He said, what? I says, you carry me till the end of the year with my pay and benefits. I said, and I'll retire. I said, I only got 3 months to go for 65. I said, I'll hang it up. Okay. I said, but you got to make a good package for me. So he went back and talked with Leon, and they came up with a feasible package. Leon got rid of, I think it was 7 or 8 of us within 2 days. Figured it up, it was how many years of experience? It was over 1,000 years of experience. And it was all the older guys that were came up through the company with his dad, you know, and we all had a close relationship with him.
Was there anything else you asked for before you left the company? And that was in 2003, I believe.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that you did before you left Leblanc that day?
That day I went and I told him, I would like to say goodbye to everybody. Oh yeah, no problem. He says, take your time. So I went through the plant and I shook hands with everybody and said goodbye. And when I got done, I came back. I said, okay, I'm ready. He says, is there anything you'd like to have? I said, yeah. He said, there's a picture of Vito, or a portrait, hanging up in the mouthpiece department in the office. I'd like to have it. Okay, let's take a walk. So we walked down there. This one here, yeah. He took it off the wall and handed it to me. I said, okay, thank you, goodbye. And I went out the door. And that was it. I never went back. I went back two times after that when the new owners bought the building, and just as a consultant for some different things in the building that they couldn't figure out what it was. And I was the only guy that really knew about the place, you know. I knew every brick in the place. So I told him, if they ever need me, call me, you know. He said, well, I'll put you on a retainer. I said, that's not necessary.
Sounds like over the years you built a tremendous relationship with Vito Pascucci. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, very much so. There's a connection there. I was related to him, but we didn't act as relatives in the factory. My father-in-law worked. He was one of the first guys to work for Vito, and he was head of personnel when I started there. He hired me, and Vito was his brother-in-law. He was married to Vito's sister.
Do you have any stories about Vito and what he was like to work with and what he did for the company?
I personally thought he was a great guy. He did a lot of things for a lot of people, and he didn't want any recognition for it. He always wanted to keep it quiet. And he did a lot of nice things for people in the factory. We had Christmas parties, retirement parties. He would, every once in a while, he would have the secretary call up and order a bunch of pizzas brought in, and we would knock off work maybe a half hour early or so. And he would go down into his wine cellar and bring a few bottles of wine up and pass it out to people. You know, we would have a little couple of drinks. And we did that for a while, but then I thought one day, I said, you know, this is kind of risky, because if they drink a little too much, you get in an accident, we're liable, you know. So I told Vito, I said, you know, we can do the pizzas, I said, but let's just get soda instead, and cut out the wine. I said, because, you know, I don't want to see you get sued. He said, yeah, he says, you know, you're right. So that ended the wine. But he used to come out every once in a while and give a bottle of wine to different people, you know. I know on my birthday, he always he'd give me a bag of wine. In fact, I got some downstairs in my bar, and it's a shame because I'm not really a wine drinker. And had my neighbor over next door. He owned a liquor store, and he's got a ton of wine in this place. And we uncorked a couple bottles, and they were bad. They had gone bad. So now I got an estimate probably 50 or 60 bottles of wine, and I don't know if they're good or not.
Now, Vito is known as being a very well-dressed man. Do you have any stories about that in particular?
Yes, he was a very well-dressed man. He got the award, oh God, several times. I don't even know how many, but he got them many times. And he got all his suits were all custom made in Chicago. One of the tailors was a House of Durrell, and oh God, I can't remember the other guy's name. He was an Italian guy. And he would go down there, and we'd have to take him down. He didn't like to drive into Chicago, so I had a guy that used to drive for him. So he drove him down there, and he'd go in there and he'd get measured up, and he'd get half a dozen suits at a time at least. So every once in a while he would, when he got too many in there, he didn't have room anymore, he'd get a fit and go in there and start cleaning out. And he'd come out and he'd call me, the secretary would call me in there, and he says, "I got these suits," he says, "you take what you want and give them to whoever they'll fit, you know, but don't bring them out, you know, in front of the people, because you don't want to see that." So I would do that, and I would have to call the guys in one at a time. I had in my office, take your pick, what do you want, you know. So it was kind of a nice thing. It was very, very nice.
Do you have any stories about Mr. Leblanc, the namesake of the company?
Mr. LeBlanc came to America one time when I was there, and I met him. And he was a single guy. He never got married. He was an only child, and his house was attached to the factory. He had a door from the house that went right into the factory. And I went to France 3 times, and we went there to. First time I went was to try and help them accustom to our ways a little bit as far as assembly, because they were, you know, kind of in the dark ages the way they did things. Well, then we went back 2 more times. We closed. We had 3 plants over there. One was in Paris, and it was kind of funny. The contrabass we're talking about, we had 2 guys there that made contrabasses and stuff, but they didn't get along with each other. So one was on the 1st floor and one was on the 8th floor. Well, anyway, when they got out of that, they closed that plant up and they sold it to a hospital, and they were supposed to make an insane asylum out of it. Well, they never did it, and it got taken over by poachers. And they had graffiti written on it and everything. And the guy I was with took me down there and showed me it, because I had never seen it. And another time we were there, at the same time and another time we went to collect the tooling that wasn't being used over there, and whatever machinery we wanted out of the factory we were closing up. And when I went into the main factory with Mr. LeBlanc came up to me, shook hands with me, and said, "Hi, Don." And I looked at him, I said, "My God, you remember me after, what, 8 years?" "Oh yeah, I remember you." So he was a pretty nice guy. He had a case right by the door of his house. It was a display case, and he had instruments, all the first instrument that he made. He kept the first one, and he put them in there. And it was quite a thing to look at.
Going back to the makeup of the plant as far as employees go, you mentioned a few times during the interview there's a lot of women that work there. Can you talk about the makeup of the plant in regards to the employees? Was it a union shop, pay benefits, anything like that, as it relates to the other industries here in Kenosha?
We were probably 80% women, I would guess, and the rest guys, 20% guys. A lot of it was the women more adaptable to the kind of work that we did there. And we had guys in the tool room and a couple in the press room because that was heavier work. And we had guys where the rougher jobs were. And like I say, the plant was very well kept.
Were there a lot of long-term employees there, or was there a lot of turnover?
Oh yeah, we had a lot of long-term. We had a sonority board that was, I think, 4 by 8, and it had the little letters that you punched in there. And you had to be there at least 5 years to get on there. And we filled that up, and we had to put a second one up. And the top guys at that time, were 50 years. And we had several guys in the 40s, the 30s. It went right down.
Was it the best paying job in Kenosha, or why did people stay for that long?
Well, we were not the best paying. I mean, we couldn't compete with American Motors in wages. But it was a decent wage. Most of the women were there as a secondary income. Their husbands worked someplace else, and they worked there. And it was light work. We had an insurance program. We had 401. Vacations, paid vacation.
This is all on one shift, or were there multiple shifts?
No, we worked, when I first started there, it was, they had a few guys on the night shift for drilling bodies because we didn't have the automatic machine by then. But the majority of the time it was all first shift. And
how many people would have been employed at a given time?
I think in the factory, if I remember, it was about 120. In the office was another 40 people probably.
During the course of time that you worked for Leblanc, were there any technological changes or any other changes that, I guess, changed the way that you produced the instruments or changed your industry?
Yeah, we were, the bosses are very eminent on keeping up on new processes. So whenever came up with an idea, they had built when I first started there, they used to drill the bodies on a kind of a drill press type thing with a sliding bar. And we used to have a master drum on it with all the holes in it for where the tone holes were on the bodies. So they had different tools that were color coded to match the drum. So they would do all these things by hand, put the tool in there, pull the thing down, drill a hole. Another one come chamfer the hole. He had a whole rack of, and then one guy was doing uppers, one guy doing lowers, and a good guy could do about 60 a day. So we built a machine for automatic drilling. 2 machines actually, one for the upper and one for the lower. That was a rotating. We used that for quite a while, and then we bought CNC machines. They had a big round master drum on it, and we would push a button and the thing would go, and it would pick the tool out it needed, drill the hole, put it in the first available space. It never, 9 times out of 10, never wound up in the same spot. But the machine had a memory that it would recognize where it went for the next time they needed it. And that machine could do a body a minute, or 60 an hour. So we did one for the uppers first, and then we did one for the lowers. And they were, I think at the time, about 120 grand a piece. But then on the soldering operations for the keys, we built a machine that we could place the key on a jig and press a button, and it would rotate to the first station. It would heat it, go to the next station, heat it a little bit more, and go around complete till it was soldered together. It automatically soldered it. When the operator, all he did was put one in, take one out. So that we built in-house. Those were some of the things.
Earlier you mentioned the customers of the factory or for the company were really dealers. Who played LeBlanc instruments? Were there schools, school bands? Were there famous musicians? Can you touch on that a bit?
Well, Vito was the innovator of the industry on school rental programs. He come up with the idea and got a few dealers interested in it, where they would buy the instruments and then go into the schools and rent them out to the kids. You know, they'd try them out for 3 months, and then if they liked it, they would buy it with whatever they paid rent applied to the purchase. So he innovated that through the industry, and that worked out quite well. And the other dealers, I'm losing my train of thought.
So the people playing the instruments, it's
yeah,
a lot
the
of
players,
school bands, but then...
School bands, yeah, a lot of school bands. The Rambler Band, or whatever, Black Watch, I know we were very involved with them. I'm trying to think of the college.
You mentioned it may have been Florida. Was it Florida A&M?
Florida A&M, yeah. It was an all-black school. They play silver instruments that we furnished them, and we had Pete Fountain was one of our players. We made a special horn for him one time, and we had the bell section of the clarinet, which is around down here. We drilled some holes in it all the way around, and we brought it down to Ventura, and he put diamonds in them. So he had diamonds going all the way around. And he would come into the factory, and he had a collection of horns he used to play. But when he came in, we would adjust the horns to whatever he wanted, you know. And when he came to the factory, a lot of times he used to come by bus, and they would, several times they put a concert during the winter inside the factory. He gave a concert. And other times we had it out in the garden, and we would get sheets of plywood and lay it down for him. And we had to get a piano. We had to go down to Manny Mitka's music store, which is down at Passage, get a piano and bring it up for a piano player. And we had, and then we used to make lamps for him out of clarinets. I was going to bring one along today, but the weather was kind of icky. Then L. Hurt played our trumpet, Who else? It's hard to remember all
You
these.
mentioned Miles Davis, possibly.
Miles Davis, Maynard Ferguson. Maynard was a wild guy. He would come in, he'd blow that horn and hit them high notes, man. It would just, he'd go right through you. And we had 2 soundproof booths in the factory that we used to provide for customers to come in and try horns. And when he blew a horn in there, you could hear him outside. He was something else. But they were pretty good. We got to meet them all. Very friendly guys.
Some wonderful stories about your time at the factory. What was your favorite part of working for Leblanc?
Oh God, I enjoyed everything that I did there, really. I guess probably in the end when I was a plant manager was probably the best, because I got to meet with all the people more. You know, I could meet with everybody, where when I was in shipping and receiving, it was kind of a confined area, you know. I mean, I got out to the factory, but I mean, you didn't get involved with the people that much. And we had a good crew, and nice people. You know, we had a couple here and there to make your hair stand on end, but I only had one fight go on over there, and I had to dismiss a couple people. But other than that, I mean, it was pretty good. Everybody got along pretty good with each other. We had a nice, when we put the new building up, the last one, we put a new cafeteria in, and it was well equipped. It had, I think there was like 7 or 8 vending machines in there, and we had refrigerators and microwaves and everything in there for them.
These are some wonderful stories, Don. We really appreciate you joining us for Kenosha Voices. Thank you for coming today and sharing your memories and sharing your stories.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. It was a great place to work.